Why does everybody seem so worried about the digital ID card? Surely, if you've got nothing to hide, you should have nothing to worry about, right? Well, wrong. No, this should concern everyone. And if you've not stopped to consider why it's such a bad idea, I'm going to share those ideas with you in this video. But first, if you like my content, if you find it educational, entertaining, informing, thought-provoking, please take a moment to like and follow. Do that for me right now. Okay, so here's the thing. Back in the Blair Brown governments, they were very, very keen to bring in an ID card. And it eventually got shelved in 2011. And at that point, we had already spent £500 million on creating this thing. And although this is not yet a proposition that's gone to government, Starmer is starting testing us to see how we respond. It's crucial you understand all of the problems associated with it, because Starmer and his minions are going to tell us this is a fantastic tool in the fight against illegal migration, because he recognises that's a concern for many people. And a follow-up reason will be it's more convenient, it's an easier way to deal with the state. Let's break these assertions down, because they are, at best, misinformed. At worst, well, your government is lying to you. Who'd have thought? Suck here, Starmer, lying. All right, so the first statement is this idea of it's going to help cut down illegal migration. Well, that's obviously nonsense. If you've been prepared to travel across multiple countries for weeks or months, you've been prepared to break multiple rules and laws, does it really matter if there's no ID card that you can easily access at the end? And let's be honest, if you can arrive in a country, not have any identity, have broken into the country effectively, and then maybe not even speak English and still get a job within 12 hours on a delivery app, probably you're not going to be too concerned about whether or not you have a proper ID. So the stated aim, the reason for wanting it, is a nonsense. And at best, they are misreading this. At worst, it's an out-and-out lie. So it's not going to do what it's supposed to do. So that alone should give us pause for thought. Second, it's going to be phenomenally expensive. Think about any government project you like. When did the last government project you can think of come in on time and under budget? You literally can't think of an example. And when it comes to tech, government has a very bad record. Doesn't matter whether we talk about the communists in number 10 at the moment or any previous government of your preference. They just can't do it. They can't do it on time. And to make matters worse, we have a government that's comprised of people that have never had a real job, that have no concept of business, of delivery details, of actual cost and value. And so this thing's going to be hugely expensive, massively late, and it won't work, which leads us to problem 3. You see, at the moment, if you have a social media account that decides you've said something you shouldn't have done or has some issue, you might get a red flag, you might get a warning, you might get a bit of a penalty. Worst case, you'll be bounced off the social media platform. But worst case, you could decide to restart your profile and get going again. But imagine if the stated aim is all government departments have access to this thing. Well, if you have a problem with it, whether it is your problem or their mistake, you're stuffed. Think about data access. Think about all the hacking stories in the news at the moment. And this isn't just getting bounced off a social media platform. This is your entire life and interaction with the state put on standstill, possibly at risk of exposure, because the government cannot be trusted to manage data safely. It just cannot. Which takes us to our last reason, and possibly our most dangerous and concerning reason. That is one of mission creep. You see, if this were to happen, it would be sold originally as it's a great way to cut down illegal migration because all of the different government departments will be linked to this one app and linked to you. Well, that does sound convenient, doesn't it? You can wave your ID and sort out your driving license or your nan's pension or your benefits. Great. Except that's how it will start. And then over time, this government, previous governments have done the same. They will start to require that commercial organisations do things using the ID card. And the penalty to the organisation will be a massive fine. Clear example of this is money laundering. So when money laundering rules were brought in, originally it was aimed at people like solicitors and accountants. You've got to demonstrate the source of funds above a certain amount. And of course, that amount has dropped and the requirement has increased until eventually you get to where we are now, which pretty much you spend anything more than 10 quid, they're going, where'd you get this money from? Now imagine that same thing applied to your data and your ability to move through life. It will start subtly. Banks will be required to prove beyond all reasonable doubt that you are who you say you are. Now they are already required to do that, right? That's already what they have to do. But that will simply become a little nudge from the government. You can either have digital ID, or if you don't collect digital ID and we find there's any mistake, says the government to the bank, we will fine you X amount of money, a lot of money. So the banks on the safe side will say, we need your digital ID as well. So you'll have to cough it up if you want to be able to use banks. And then it will be very simple, for example, for shops to start saying, oh, we're really struggling with poor behaviour in the town. We've got shoplifters. The government will say, well, we've got limited resources. Now, we can help you out with a police presence, but we're going to need to know who's in your shop. So it's up to you, shop, but if you want police response, you need to be able to tell us who's in the shop at any one time. So very simple, just get your customers to swipe their digital ID as they enter. So now the government knows where you go to shop, what you buy, and how much money you've got coming in and going out. And then one more example, if this hasn't really horrified you, they go to flight companies, holiday companies. Of course, in the interest of the environment, we would like to ensure that as a business, you sell no more than X amount of miles around the world. And once that limit is breached, we don't want you to do any more. So probably the safest way to do this, the most fair way, fairness is the word they'll use, is that each customer, when you digital ID them, you then track how many miles they're going, where they're going, and of course you'll know with whom they're going. And all of a sudden, the government can say, no, you can't shop there. You can't buy that. You can't go there. You can't do anything unless the government says you can. And if you misbehave, unlike social media where you get a red flag, you have to amend your behaviour or start a new profile, this is the real world. The government can go, no, we don't like what you're saying. We don't like the way you're behaving. We don't like where you're shopping. We don't like with whom you associate. That's it. You're now going to be grounded for a week. And that doesn't mean you can't just go on a platform for a week. It means you can't go anywhere because nowhere will let you in because all of them will have their digital ID. This is a serious concern and all of us ought to be very, very worried about it. Any government that brings this in has the capability to make a mess of it in all the ways that I've discussed in this video. And right now, we've got a bunch of ideologues. They don't care about practicality. They don't care about things actually working. All they care about is proving that they are correct. And that means we are hugely at risk if this goes through.